Last week's video got me thinking about the kindergarten again, and that, by extension, got me thinking about Pink Diamond's behavior when she came down to the kindergarten, which, again, by extension, got me thinking about all of Pink Diamond's behavior all over again. Specifically her behavior during the time before, leading up to, and during the war. Yeah, we could lump some of the early Rose behaviors that we saw in with this, since I think that We Need to Talk marks the first real change in Rose's character in millennia, but we don't know what happened in the thousands of years during which she was spending time on Earth not engaged in a civil war. In theory, anything important to the story should be shown in the show, but this is the show which, even now, insists on only following Steven's point of view, even when it's often detrimental to its stories. So, who knows? That said, I've been trying to figure out why Pink Diamond behaved the way that she did. Why Rose behaved the way that she did. Back when the Rose Diamond theory was really popular in the first place, a lot of people thought that maybe the reason why she acted so high and mighty and full of herself was because she was a diamond and she was used to thinking that way. And I think that the aspects of her personality which still reflect that sort of high and mighty positioning for herself, that almost compulsion that she seemed to have to build effigies of herself, like the statue at her fountain, for example, or arguably even the temple itself, could stem back to that mentality of thinking. But we know a whole lot more about Pink Diamond's behaviors at this point, and they just don't seem to line up with what we thought a diamond might be and what we have seen that a diamond typically is. We've seen all 4 diamonds at this point, and while they do have differences in their behaviors, at the very least, yellow and blue, though you could make this argument for white diamond as well, despite the quirks in their personalities and the slightly different ways that they do things, they still have a pretty consistent mentality. They do their jobs and they don't think much about it. They, at the very least, value remaining logical whenever possible. If they didn't, then Yellow Diamond wouldn't have tried to convince Blue to give up on her grief over Pink using logic, and they tend not to care about the gems below them. While I can't really explain why Pink Diamond came to care about the gems and the people below her in any ways beyond how the show has already tried to explain it, and I honestly don't think I need to, I think I can explain her other behaviors. First of all, we have to establish that she didn't come down to her first kindergarten because she cared about the Quartzes there. She came down to her first kindergarten because she wanted to see them hatch. That's literally it. She thought it would be a cool thing to see. She was bored and she wanted something to do. This doesn't speak of her being caring, it speaks of her being impulsive. And I would argue that that impulsivity stems from a sense of entitlement, which is something that, of course, all of the diamonds are going to have. But Pink seems to be the only diamond who can't restrain that, who allows that to get in the way of her duties. I think we can all agree that Rose was not ready for a colony, that if she had been given a colony once she was ready for a colony, the events of the show probably never would have happened. Earth would have been colonized, humanity would be dead, and that would have been the end of that. Because if Rose had been given a colony once she was ready for one, she would have reached that point in her, I don't know, development of her personality, of her command style, where she had learned to remain detached and not think about the gems or the people below her, as well as that point where she knew how to control that sense of entitlement and keep it from turning into impulsiveness. That is to say, I do think that the other diamonds may have been like this at one point or another, but that they were made to mature out of this mindset by White Diamond. And while it's simply possible that White simply hadn't taught Pink all the things that she was supposed to teach Pink yet, or I guess another way of saying it, she hadn't encouraged all the right behaviors in Pink yet at that point, I have another theory for why Pink Diamond was the way she was, for as long as she was, and how she got a colony even though she was that way. Because while I do agree with the majority consensus among the fandom that Pink was most likely the youngest diamond, she would still be ancient. And honestly, I don't think she's that much younger than Blue or Yellow. I think that explaining her behaviors by making her significantly younger than Blue and Yellow would be too easy, too simple, and wouldn't exactly explain why Blue and Yellow care so much about her. In order for them to care so much about her, they would have had to have known her for a very long time. I talked in a previous episode about one theory that I had for the dynamic between Blue, Yellow, Pink, and White Diamonds, and I made it clear that I thought that that was a very unlikely theory. So here is a more likely theory to explain the dynamics between these characters. First of all, I want to run through some reminders of events which have happened recently in the show. One of the things that I've always found interesting about Rose and her rebellion is that she seemed to think that rebelling would be, I don't know, simple probably isn't the right word, but it definitely seems like she expected it to go more smoothly than it actually did. This makes sense now if she was a diamond who had never faced real failure before. A diamond who had just been given everything that she wanted up to this point. And yet we know that she wasn't. We know that at the very least, Yellow Diamond was opposed to just giving her things that she wasn't ready to have yet. Things that she wasn't prepared for. And so, while I do think that the diamonds would kind of come wholesale with a strong sense of entitlement simply due to their position, with Yellow, the military leader of Homeworld, a gem who I would imagine you have to consult every time you go to colonize a new planet, constantly telling Pink that she wasn't ready for a colony, what was it that made her think that she was? What was it that kept that going in her mind? What was it that nurtured that entitlement to the point that she felt like she knew better than a gem made to know this? Also, it's worth noting that while Yellow Diamond still wasn't convinced that Steven didn't remember Pink's past, took the time to explain to him that White Diamond uses bubbles as punishments, suggesting that maybe Yellow and Blue have been bubbled as punishment, but Pink hasn't. That Pink, by contrast, gets sent to a room instead, like we saw happen at the end of Steven's giant pink ass. That was the name of the episode, right? It's certainly what I remember it as. White is also very dismissive of Pink's behavior. She's very dismissive of the idea that Pink was a traitorous rebel, when Yellow was convinced that she was going to be more difficult, when she was convinced that she and Blue were going to have to talk on Pink's behalf. This again suggests that Blue and Yellow have faced White Diamond's anger before, but Pink never has. I still don't like calling one gem the mother to others, or gems sisters to one another, because gems simply don't have that concept. But I am at this point convinced that Blue, Yellow, Pink, and White are being coded as a family of some sort. And while the obvious conclusion to draw here is that Blue, Yellow, and Pink were the abused children of White in this analogy, that she was an abusive, overbearing mother figure to those three characters, I'm starting to get the impression that a different story is being told here. The story of an overbearing mother figure who was abusive and unfair to two of her three quote-unquote children, Blue Diamond and Yellow Diamond, but who showed favoritism to the third, spoiling her and allowing her to get away with things that the others couldn't. I think that Pink got her colony by eventually going around Yellow and begging White for one, and that White relented because she likes Pink more than Blue and Yellow. This explains perfectly how Pink could have gotten a colony, despite the fact that it did seem that Yellow had to sign off on the idea, even though she wasn't ready. She clearly wasn't ready, and Yellow recognized that. It explains why Yellow and Blue were so insistent that she keep building the colony that she wanted so badly. Almost like they were bitter that she went around them to get this thing that she didn't deserve yet. Most importantly, though, it explains why she didn't go to White to ask to stop making the colony. The favorite child tends to recognize that they're the favorite child, and especially in a situation where the other children are treated badly, that favorite child will, consciously or subconsciously, go out of their way to preserve that favorite child to the parent dynamic. This means that it's very possible that Pink didn't go to White to ask to stop making her colony because she didn't want to disappoint White and jeopardize that dynamic between them, or maybe she even wanted to convince Blue and Yellow to make the choice for her, rather than her just declaring in an official capacity that she was abandoning this particular colony, so that if White did get upset, they would take the heat for that, and she wouldn't. Like, I don't think this was malicious or anything, but again, I think she was aware that she was treated better than the other two diamonds. And seeing how badly the other diamonds were treated, how badly they were sometimes treated, she was desperate to preserve the dynamic between her and White that already existed, the dynamic which kept her safe from that. This may even explain why she chose to rebel as Rose Quartz instead of herself, especially once her rebellion stopped being about convincing Blue and Yellow Diamond and started being about actually freeing Gem. Could you imagine how many gems she could have turned to her side if she, as Pink Diamond, claimed that she had discovered a different and better way, asking them to join her rather than ordering them to? She certainly, at the very least, would have been given the opportunity to turn some of her beta kindergarten gems to her side, one way or the other, which apparently never happened. What it seems like to me is she chose to rebel as Pink Diamond, at least at first, because she hoped that one day she could change everyone's minds and go back to being Pink Diamond and return to Homeworld, but that she was worried that that was something she could never do if she was seen as a traitor. So she kept rebelling as Rose Quartz while continuing to attempt to convince the others as Pink Diamond, until finally she realized she was never going to convince anybody, and made the very poor, snap decision to kill the Pink Diamond side of herself forever. Honestly, I think that this theory is pretty great, because if it ends up being true, it casts White Diamond's shadow over all of the events of this show so far. The very shape of the rebellion, which in turn shaped the present of the show, was traced around the shadow that White Diamond cast over Pink's life. This also creates a really interesting dynamic between the diamonds, aside from White Diamond, that is. Blue, yellow, and pink still would have been around each other for a very long time. They still would have been like a family to each other, so blue and yellow still would have cared about Pink Diamond, but they also would have resented her since their leader always gave her breaks and showed her favoritism. I mean, hell, showing her favoritism even explains why Pink was such a brat. Kids who get away with stuff, they turn into brats. This means that in coming episodes, it may be Blue and Yellow Diamond who are in more danger than Steven, which would be super interesting to see. Overall, I just think that this dynamic that I proposed here I think it's cool. I think it opens up a whole lot of really neat storytelling possibilities. And way more than my weird White Diamond and Pink Diamond switch roles theory, I do think that this one could turn out to be true, and honestly, might. But as per usual, guys, I'd like to know, what did you think of this theory? Let's get a discussion going in the comment section down below, or over on my Discord, link in the description. But either way, this has been AJ22, and I will talk to you guys later.